Chapter 11. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It was an acceptable proposal. At this state, we shouldn't be indecisive in moving at all. Rather, it would be better to move the whole tribe. Thus, Goff's selection was a very correct decision. It's an exaggeration to say that we had already killed off nearly all the humans in the southern forest. Probably, there are people who are still living on and fighting somewhere covertly. But, hunting these guys was already meaningless. After this episode is over, I could start to imagine us going into a drought once we entered the continent. Although I didn't know during my human period, the selection of the number of summoned humans was either plentiful or lacking was not determined by the abilities of the surviving humans, but also how much stronger the goblins were that had been summoned at the same time. Anyways, Goff and I were already resolute on moving to a different place. But the problem of moving was, where to? It has been quite a while since the tutorial has started. The roads to the west and east were blocked by rivers, so the only place we could move were limited to just north. If I recall, if we move north, Goff and I will have the fight we wanted. However, we too will be at risk. The one who had the same degree of motivation as me. Later on to be known as the Queen of the North, I'm sure that person had started from the north if I remember. That person had extremely quick adaptability from the beginning. She had easily won the first battle and easily adjusted to the system. Once she entered the continent, she was one of the elites as she would be what you'd call a talented person. In other words, genius, or a summoned who had been given a special type of advantage. Among those geniuses, one of them was precisely the Queen of the North. After accessing the continent, she would conquer countless dungeons and monsters after receiving training, and within 5 years, she would establish her own city with her guild. Afterwards, that Queen of the North would battle against the Salvation Knights and inflict a huge injury on the Saint Sword's power. She was quite a grateful person, but it was a rumor that I heard at a bar, so I'm not sure, but if it's really true, then entering the north would be quite foolish. The reason why was because the way the Queen of the North operated was extremely fierce, or so I heard at that time. Also, I wonder how the northern forest is. Wouldn't it be cold? It was cold. It was probable that those people who had started in the south won't know. It will be terribly rigorous. Well, it didn't matter where third rates like us start. But still, the north was really harsh. What if another species other than goblins appear? No, the weather I meant. The food we could eat were only monsters. Even if we were to try and obtain something, it would take quite a long time. Rather, it wouldn't be a problem to these goblins. Since I had swept clean most of the summoned goblins that were near the vicinity of the Queen of the North. Queen of the North. I've heard a lot of rumors, but isn't she technically a summoned woman who knows nothing as well? Although I did hear numerous stories of the Queen in the North, I couldn't believe it as an orc who has been tearing down enemies since the start of the tutorial. Everybody knows it's an exaggeration. Well, it would be nice if it was an exaggeration as well. When I had first seen the Queen of the North, I felt that the world was quite unfair. If you had seen her as well, you'd probably know that feeling. Ah. This girl was chosen. And think like that. Well. It's alright. Isn't that the same as well with the Saint Sword? Here, only those who are destined will become successful. I wish there could be a droppable tem that could allow you to evolve. Cook. Cook. I should think about that once I actually enter a dungeon nearby. After drinking with Choi Solji, although I was in a mess, I could clearly remember the words that one guy said. Queen of the North, a real ruler who possessed strength, intelligence of course, leadership and popularity. But it wasn't a fight that was without hope. Even if the guy I had met from the past was truthful, over here we had Goff and I who had finished our evolutions into orcs. Especially, Goff was quite strong even of the orcs. The story that she had cut through an orc with a sword in the tutorial was definitely an exaggeration. If you think about it, it's a story that doesn't make any sense at all. The act that a girl had killed over 10 goblins on her first battle was an exaggeration to begin with. Even when men had run away from the site due to fear. Finishing my thoughts, I slowly looked at Goff and opened my mouth. Let's go to the north. Karuk. Coldness, harsh weather, danger, honor, so you pursue those kind of things. Blood dagger. Definitely different. Goff connected what I said with those as he laughed. Mev, who was sitting beside me as my lieutenant, looked at my eyes as she nearly chuckled. Coldness, harsh weather, danger, honor, I definitely don't want these at all. Rather, what I wanted to attain was that honey hidden in that place. But, since Goff's misunderstanding would be greatly beneficial, I was resolute to leave it like this. I only desire victory. Even I was quite embarrassed saying this line. But wanting victory was the truth. I need to get stronger, and there was a lot of people I had to meet. Karuk. Very good. Very good. Then right after we prepare, we will head to the north. Of course we will leave the cowards that don't want to go here. What we need are warriors. Good. As such, we finished our short meeting. After returning to each of our clans and explaining the situation, the goblins of Goff clan were in a very frantic mood. We're going to the north. Girek. It's an honorable battle. It's time to display our brave Goff clan's strength. Although it would be thankful for Blood Dagger clan to show such a response, but they had a vague response. The majority was that they didn't want to go, but they had no choice but to. Although it's not attractive, I never had a loss while following the captain's words. Girek. The north seems cold. But if we all are together, it'll be warm. But being alone is even more cold. We are the Blood Dagger clan. We will follow the captain. Girek, but. Must we have to go? Girek. Seeing them like this, the goblins were quite cute. It was a situation where I even wondered why I had thought of these goblins as dangerous in the past. Although it was somewhat understandable on how they attacked us, but right now, these were very loyal clan members. And the fact that Goff clan's Goff and I didn't maintain our distance made these goblins more pleased with the clan. Thankfully, there were no goblins that wanted to stay behind in the end. Not only that, the rest of the tribes were the same. Since there were so many belligerent goblins, the rest of the clan members didn't request to leave. Rather, they were in a joyous state. To conclude, we quickly finished our preparations and marched on north. The boisterous goblins began to cut trees along the way and made baskets, which they sloppily tried and make coats out of human skin, while others were preparing other things in advance for the foreseeable future. The problem was Young Heian. Since she was a plant, she was extremely susceptible to the cold. Thus, we wrapped her up with large tree leaves and carried her. If her body were to freeze, then I wouldn't mind embracing her in my arms along the way. Thank you. No. Right now, we are on the same side. Ah. Yes. Yes, Captain. Though it was a bye. Talk, unfortunately, despite evolving into an Allron, she couldn't follow along the monster's conversations. But, thankfully, it seems that her ears had opened as she was able to understand to some extent. It seems that it will take a few more years before it'll be somewhat useful. We are departing. Girek. Girek. Boom. 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 With drums of human skin and wooden clubs colliding, we began to march on north. After nearly dominating all of the south, the increase in goblin numbers were immense. Considering how the population of the tutorial was originally, the population of goblins and hobgoblin troops was like a nation moving. Even more, all kinds of advertisement that we did as we marched caused surviving goblins here and there began to join us who had wondered what in the world was going on. To complete the tutorial by defeating the Queen of the North was like a painted dream scenario. Since the march was boring, it was effective to bring dried meat beforehand. Eating the meat that had parted ways with its green leather was a splendid visual. Although the taste was bland, it felt as if I was chewing on some really soft dried squid. Jung Hae-yeon. Yes. Yes. Captain. Should I offer you some honey? It was quite cute seeing Jung Hae-yeon lower her head in embarrassment after saying that line. After evolving into a monster, even after being accustomed to her body of flowing honey, she was still not accustomed to giving it out. The taste was honey, but in truth, it wasn't that, so she couldn't help be embarrassed. But the addictiveness was too strong. It was a strange pleasant feeling. Since I simply pressed Jung Hae-yeon down. Simply, although it was a pleasant feeling to make fun of Jung Hae-yeon, but the sweet melting sweetness of that honey was something more extraordinary. The satisfaction to enjoy what I couldn't in my previous life was uplifting. To explain it, I thought that maybe this was obvious. Soon afterwards, the disappeared Jung Hae-yeon began to bring back honey. In the past, it was an exquisite food that I couldn't eat. It was only more motivation for me to get stronger. Here. Here it is. Please. Enjoy it, Captain. That I continued to walk as I thought of the future. First, in this kind of world, the treatment of the strong, whether it were monsters or humans, were the same. Like the time I was dumbfounded backstabbed in my previous life. And the death of Choi Solji that followed. Even the cold reception I had received at the St. Sword's Guild House was all because I was weak. Although I am conscious of myself being too strong one day, I have a lot of things to do. First, even though she'll probably won't remember me and be rather scared, I needed to confirm if Choi Solji was well and if possible bring her to my side. And secondly, I needed to repay that Saint Sword of what I had received in full. In that chain of situations, the most foolish was the past Kim Tae-sung. It wasn't like I was going to follow her to the ends of the world and exact my revenge like a crazy murderer, but whenever her face materializes in my mind, I can't help but be extremely angry. I will return what I suffered. I will repay grace with grace, and death with death. I quietly lit my fighting spirit aflame as I started to walk. Goff had coincidentally met my eyes and brought his hand to his chest, so I likewise laid my hand onto my chest as we continued our footsteps. To the north. The duration of the tutorial is precisely 50 days remaining. The tutorial's objective is to survive for 50 days. TL afterward. TL afterward, but being alone is even more cold, oh my god. Don't worry. I feel your pain, asterisk pats head asterisk, oh and these goblins are so funny. These despicable goblins are hilarious compared to the Goff clan. At rando correct. A thumbs up to your guess on how the Queen of the North was a human. Hee PR afterward Hulk. I only desire victory, boss level mentality translator. Calvi's proofreader. Psi 101. Chapter 12. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It seems we're almost there. It would be better to head to the side where the wind doesn't blow as much to settle our camp there. Karuk. Let's do that. No matter how great of a warrior you are, fighting against these winds are beyond our capabilities. I nodded at Goff's words. In the meantime, thanks to our stockpile of food, we were able to enter the north quickly despite the long march. Although we only had 50 days left for the tutorial, we moved at a somewhat relaxed pace. The march itself had taken 20 days, so we only had a mere 30 days left for the duration of the tutorial. The time was extremely tight. Anyways, I didn't know that we of the south would end up heading towards north, but I think I know why the people of the north were naturally strong. The harsh winds that attacked my skin felt as if my feet and hands were about to freeze up. To be able to finish the tutorial in such an environment shows why it's not hard to end up being strong. If you come to think of it, I think I heard that the monsters up north have some of the most named aquatic species. It seems that they had selected the most advantageous species to survive. Giric. Cold. North is really cold. I could start to hear the mumbling complaints. The pressure that we had to fight as quickly as possible once we arrived started to strain on me. I needed to somewhat relieve the complaints of my clan members. Of course the solution to that would be war and battle. The green skin that loved to fight the moment they were born, it was a useful method to reduce stress. Of course, it was the same for me likewise, who was also influenced as a monster. I could feel myself being slowly frustrated due to walking continuously. I slowly started to inspect the conditions of the clan members behind me. Whether it was goblins or hobgoblins, although they were better off than humans with their extra layer of thick skin, but young Heian was having an extremely difficult time enduring. MEV, who had a bit of natural resistance, was fine it seems. It was obvious that young Heian, who had evolved into a plant monster, couldn't resist the cold. I decided to embrace her with my body as we went. I wanted to avoid the situation of having a girl who was absurdly my subordinate be lost. Young Heian. Over here. Ah. Ah. Yes. Thank you. An orc's body was much larger than a human. Even if young Heian had evolved into an Auron, her size was smaller compared to me. I grabbed her waist and pulled her towards me. Ah! She screamed as she naturally had her body thrown towards me. It wasn't just the cloths and leaves that were used when building on tent that were on her body. I also felt a little cold, so I had no choice but to wear those as well. The other goblins all had either tree leaves or clothes that they made from dead humans tightly wrapped and fastened on their bodies. Are you all right? Yes. Thank you. Seeing her blush, I continued to resume my footsteps forward. A bit more when we will finally enter the north. We have finally arrived. HAA. Ha. Despite being attached to my body, as if she was cold, her breath started to become rougher. Pulling her a bit closer, I was able to figure out as to why her breaths were getting shorter. She's excited. Not sure if it's the species of Auron itself. After confirming whether she was real or not, occasionally, she'd fall into this state at times whenever she sees me. Whether I was being marked as prey by her or if she has Stockholm Syndrome, I'm not sure, but it wasn't something I necessarily hated. Being indifferent, I moved with young Heian in my embrace. I continued to rub my body with her. I had rather welcomed this kind of scenario than focusing on the cold and lonely march. She slowly started to mess with my strong body with her soft breasts. If young Heian came out like this, I would be excited likewise. Not sure if she realized this, but her honey was flowing down my body. Ha! HAA. As if that wasn't enough, she slowly locked her thighs with mine. Thanks to this, I was constantly trying to get into the pedal of young Heian. Whether it was because she had a hard time trying to find it on my evolved monster's body or that she was not accustomed to it, I wasn't sure, but she was having an extremely difficult time searching for it. Though I wanted to help, a lewd thought started to materialize. I stared at young Heian and laughed. That's so. I'm not sorry. A voice that crawls like an ant. I made a playful expression as I opened my mouth in reaction. Do what you want. Ah. Ha. Ah. Thank you. If she was mentally human, I don't think she would attach herself to me like this. She was trying her hardest to match her pedal with my thing as she covertly withdrew her ass out. Since it wasn't going as she had planned, in the end, she stared at me with a sorrowful expression. PL. Please. Please. I beg of you. She was basically saying that it didn't matter since everyone around her were green monsters. Or that she couldn't control her excitement and didn't care about her shame. Anyways, she looked at me pleadingly. That hot, sticky liquid that was on my body. I thrust it into young Heian's body. Knowing that she would scream, I placed my palm onto her mouth in advance. The feeling inside her was ecstatic. Not even exaggerating, the feeling was so much greater than it felt of a human. I could finally understand why crazy humans tried to catch Aurons to their deaths. That sticky and tightening feeling that was grasping my thing was hard to describe. Ach. Aside from what I felt, the other side was already melting into her own pleasure. Although she hadn't moved her body directly yet, she trembled as she looked up into the skies. Ach. Ach. In the end, a large scream escaped out from her mouth. Girik. It's an enemy. Who? Human. The goblins who were walking suddenly screamed as if there was definitely something ahead. While the goblins were making a clamorous commotion, Mev was staring towards my side, in which I avoided her eyes. Ha! In that period, Young Hei-Eon was busy trying to solve the reverberations of her body afterwards. Her face was in a state so flustered, I was curious as to just how high she had risen in ecstasy. It's a first. Whether it was an orgasm that she felt or the intercourse itself, I didn't specify, but Young Hei-Eon nodded. Yes. Yes. Thank you. It was an expression that she couldn't believe it herself. I didn't answer to her expression and slowly nudged her body away from me. Though I wasn't certain, I could certainly feel the magic in my body depleted. Those humans with exhausted magic would soon die a horrible death. It seems there was one more reason to evolve. I slowly inspected Young Haeun's body. Green skin. The face that was no different from when she was a human. A weapon that wouldn't be an exaggeration of a body. And above else, that great feeling inside. Though I didn't fully enjoy it, we had already arrived at our destination. After we settle down, I can embrace that body once more. Young Hei-Eon, who had caught onto what I was roughly thinking, was blushing immensely. As such, we walked for a while as her body slowly cooled down. It's a human village. Girik. The thought that we could capture a nice strategic base made me open my mouth. Are there castle walls? Not sure if those are castle walls, but I can only see strange houses made out of ice. Girik. The source that we could capture the site of a human base in this severe weather was a great plus. This was probably a village that had endured numerous assaults from monsters. And the houses were made of ice. Not sure if there was a magician around, but the houses looked as if they were made by Eskimos from television. I'm not totally sure if this village was a part of Queen of the North's faction, but I didn't care. One way or another, we were going to totally wipe the humans of the North. Let's start. The battle that the Goth clan wanted. Karuk. Karuk. Girik. 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 Whether it was from the excitement of war, soon the vicinity became boisterous. I too started to grip my sword tighter. Everyone's emotions were the same. We wanted to soak ourselves with the blood of our enemies. Charge. Girik. Girik. As if they wanted to evolve into a drummer, all the goblins continued to excitedly pound the logs that were made of human skin. Boom. 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 Although there was no shape or form, the atmosphere started to rise in tone. As the drums thumped louder towards the peak, the Goth clan started to run forward. Victory or death. The same thinking of an orc. As if he was originally an orc and not a goblin, Goth's voice echoed throughout the field. Girik. Victory or death. Victory or death. Girik. It seems the accumulated stress of the march had exploded. The group was certainly encompassed in madness. There was definitely no formation or strategy. They rushed towards the enemies as they started to step and push one another. Even goblins that had tripped were crushed to death by their fellow comrades. Wah! Wah! It was a movement that eliminated any sort of military strategy or tactics. If the foes were of similar levels, it was no mistake that we could be annihilated with this reckless rush. The funny thing was that calmness had found me in this situation. As if my subordinates wanted to rush out as well, they started to squirm and wriggle as they stood by for orders. Blood Dagger Clan will move separately. Giric. Understood. TL afterward. Man enraged orcs plus goblins rushing towards you. That sounds horrifying if you were on the other side. Few. PR afterward. Hulk smash. But a bit of booty on the side as well. Only way to travel nowadays. TL afterward. Man enraged orcs plus goblins rushing towards you. That sounds horrifying if you were on the other side. Few. Oh, and how bloodthirsty. Even killing their own comrades by stepping over them. Goblins sure are fierce. Oh, at rando, thank you for the correction. It should be Saint Knights and not Salvation Knights. PR afterward. Hulk smash. But a bit of booty on the side as well. Only way to travel nowadays. Translator. Calvi's proofreader. Psi 101. Chapter 13. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Victory or death. Victory or death. Wah. Those goblins that screamed while running. Normally I would settle down the Goth clan and reason with them, but it seems that the stress of over 20 days had given them strength. To be honest, it was hard to stop them since they had so suddenly rushed out. With the influence of a monster, I too wanted to head into a battleground of that kind of situation as well. But, since we don't know what might transpire in the battlefield, we needed at least one clan to maintain our composure. If you see the size of our clan, then our probability of victory is high, but battles are not fought just once. Prepare to fight. Prepare to fight. Monsters. It's monsters. Since they advertised like that while rushing in, of course those guys would figure what's happening. They probably had finished their own defensive preparations. The quality of these humans were definitely different from those of the southern forest. Suddenly, warriors with shields dashed out as archers drew their bows. I can somewhat estimate how many battles they have experienced. If you were to say that all of the humans in the south were devoured by goblins, then you could say that it was opposite for the north. It seems that the humans have completely swept the goblins. Indeed, if you think this achievement was the ability of the Queen of the North, then it becomes even more clear as to why we should preserve our troops in this battle. Just from roughly inspecting them, they're not normal. We had some that had evolved into hobgoblins and some other evolved goblins, but they too had warriors that had evolved as well. Kaya. First off, we had the advantage in terms of army size. But there's definitely a variable to this. The variable that determines this is the magician of the battlefield. They were encircling the warriors with guard as they recited their spells. Fuck. Their countermeasure was extremely quick. We're going around. Understood. Captain. Giric. MEV, you and the other goblin archers draw your bows against the magicians in wait. When we signal, shoot. Even if they don't accurately hit, just make sure that your arrows fly towards that side. Okay. Though I'm not sure what kind of magic they were chanting, the fact of it being ice magic was extremely high. No matter how much they had gotten stronger, there should be a limit as to how large the area of attack that magic can be. Then, they only have two choices to make. Either they aim that magic to the champion or rare monsters. Or they simply freeze the ground. If it were me, I would definitely select the latter. If the goblins who had lost their rationality charging in front were to fall, then the rear would have casualties as well. Frankly, I don't care what form the magic appears as. What our job is to minimize the casualties as much as possible by buying time. When I thought that the magical force was getting more concentrated towards them, I raised my hand to signal the archer unit to commence. In that instant, the magician's formation who were chanting the magic was starting to hold shape. Fire. It was right before they had finished chanting. The large barrage of arrows rained down on them. Though it was obvious that the warriors were protecting the magicians with their shields, thanks to them, the magicians' sight were restricted by that defense. In other words, the minimal sight that magicians needed to secure when they were using magic was constrained. This was a basic tactic that was known once you leave for the continent. Of course, the good magicians that kept on firing magic with their good sense of maintaining sight along with the arrows of humans and the wooden carved spears of warriors were toppling the front line of the goblins. But, victory or death. They could not stop the rush of green skin. Charge! Charge! Blood Dagger Clan, charge! Kariiyuk! Girik! Girik! For the Blood Daggers! The Blood Dagger Clan entered the battle from the side. Of course, I led the army from the side as I swung my sword against the warriors that were in the forefront. It's an orc. Foo.ck. Why an orc all of a sudden? Definitely, the strength of an orc at this time was unimaginable. One swing with my broadsword brought about a bloodbath from those normal humans. Likewise, the evolved humans were the same. As expected, they couldn't withstand the alarming strength and vitality of an orc. In an instant, my whole body was bathed in blood. The snow became deathly red as my breathing became rougher. It was certain that I was receiving the influence of being a monster. The surrounding warriors who had finished their second evolution swung their swords, but I just ripped their arms apart and broke their necks. Instantly, from the detached head flowed blood as I threw it away, causing screams to start pouring out. Kariiyuk. Retreat. We're retreating. Retreat. A good decision. But in order to block your escape, I had prepared the Blood Dagger Clan's hobgoblins in advance. The only skill that young Heian acquired since evolving into an Ulron was the skill, Charm. Though humans that finished their first evolution could somewhat endure it, the inferior ones walked towards the goblin trap entranced that young Heian had dug out. I could hear the screams of the humans that entered that trap over here. Hack! Hack! Karuk! Spare a few of them. Spare a few of them. Soon, no screams could be heard. Probably young Heian and the goblins had finished their apprehensions. But, it was quite a decent battle. It was a battle that really warmed you up after a long time. So much as the battleground in the front were still under battle. Goff, who was finally able to fight humans who had the will to fight, was quite thrilled. For humans, it was of how long you could survive, but as for us goblins, it was rather a situation that we enjoyed. That's the difference between a human and a monster. In the end, the last human was killed as a large shout rumbled in the snowy field. Wawa-awea. Ooh-woo-woo. Girik. Girik. Seeing the goblins, hobgoblins, and orcs harmoniously screaming, it had brought chills down my spine. It was a scream that let the North know that a new clan had entered upon this snowy field. A new quest has been obtained. Quest, conquer the Tutorial's Northern Forest. Conquer the Northern Forest. 0/1, hidden quest. Hearing this, I couldn't help but laugh. Probably other than young Heian and I, they would probably think of the voice as a message of the god of war, so the group that attained victory screamed an even bigger cheer. To the north. To the north. Conquer the north. It's a conquest. Seeing those appearances, I tightened my fist. Even though there was no news of an evolution, but a hidden quest had been discovered. In this place, obtaining a quest was itself a hard task. In the tutorial other than the first and second quests, it was hard to receive a different quest for the rest of your life. Of course, that was exactly what happened to me in the past. The condition to finding a hidden quest was to partake on certain actions or discover clues scattered in the forest or continent. For example, the quest that we obtained after arriving in the north. The most probable condition was either massacring the humans in the south or correspond with enough significant harm. If we had more time, there should probably be a conquer quest for both the eastern and western forests. But it was a shame that it wasn't possible in this situation. The reward was random. You're not sure what you will receive exactly. What's certain is that if you do receive a quest, the reward is always beneficial to you in some way. It was a great thing that all of us had received this quest. I began to stare at our clan members one more time. There was only a few I could remember since they all looked too similar. First was Mivi, and second was the monster-evolved Yoonghye. Then, the most loyal 5 members. I still didn't understand to this day why these 5 had attached themselves to me in the first place. So, for convenience, I called these guys the Oblin 5 siblings, TL note. The vowel O in Oblin also means 5 in Korean characters. 2 were female while the rest were male. Amongst them, the first was one who had showed up to the point that he could compete with Mivi in rank as he had just finished his evolution as an orc warrior after this fight. The second one was a hobgoblin warrior who was preparing to take a path similar to the first one. The problem was the rest of these 3 males, the third, fourth and fifth. These 3 males were ridiculously not evolving into a higher race as they continued to evolve as an ordinary goblin. Thanks to them, they were quite strong at this point in time. Goblin, Goblin Warrior, Goblin Intermediate Warrior. They continued to take the path of a goblin, and after seeing MEV evolve into a fairy, it seems they were even more fixed on that path. It seems they were truly resolute to be a goblin until the end. It would rather have been better if they were an assassin or goblin thief. Was what I thought, but when I saw how they fought, I changed my mind. Although their sizes were small, their battle prowess and abilities were quite fine considering the upper paths they took. As for magic, it seems they could only feel a portion of it. As if they were the velociraptor of the Jurassic Age, which were said to be gorgeous on how skillfully they could hunt. What was even more amazing was that these 3 could fight without having been hit once. Particularly, the best part was that they talked relentlessly without resting. Girek. 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 Our captain is quite handsome. By the way, why is this human staggering this much? It doesn't even look tasty. Fly. Fly for me. They were so noisy that I secretly moved aside. Other than them, there were a few that had finished their evolutions, but there wasn't anyone noticeable that had caught my eyes yet. Of course, what was most unfortunate was the mage. Though Yoonghye was in a vague position, she had acquired a skill from her race characteristics. But she wasn't a magician, or a shaman just yet. If in the recent fight Yoonghye was either a magician or shaman, then she could definitely counter against enemy magicians. It was a relief that the recent operation was thwarted well with good timing, for there would be many casualties had it failed. If I wanted to save more goblins on my side, then it was just more incentive to evolve Yoonghye as quickly as possible. I couldn't help but be locked in thought for a bit. Yoonghye. Yes. Yes. Captain. Did you receive a different quest other than the one we recently received perchance? No, Captain. As expected, there was none. Since she had evolved a bit differently from the rest, it seems that she lost the opportunity to evolve twice. Although it wasn't bad that she was a rare monster, but the problem was that I needed to raise Yoonghye this instant. I secretly started to stare at Yoonghye. Is it only possible for you to absorb magic and vitality by having sexual intercourse? Ah. No. If I have body contact, then it's possible as a plant. To suddenly raise the topic of sexual intercourse, Yoonghye's face flushed red. After seeing her, I decided to give her leech of experience like how it's called in those online games. Then, all the survivors that our clan captured, you kill them all. Though I said it somewhat menacingly, there was no hesitation in Yoonghye's eyes. Rather, there was a look of joy and expectation. I'm not sure whether she was like that because she had evolved into a monster, or if there was such a tendency from the start, but originally seeing her cry as she plunged a dagger into a survivor before her evolution, I thought that the former answer was already out of the question. Yes. TL afterward. OMG, those 3 goblins. I can't wait to see what they'll become. And oh my word, I can't wait to see what Heian will evolve to. OTL note. Edit, changed mages to shamans, and edited previous chapters of them as well for easier differentiation in comparison to magicians. PR, puny humans, now Hulk will crush the North. TL afterward, OMG, those 3 goblins. I can't wait to see what they'll become. And oh my word, I can't wait to see what Heian will evolve to. OTL note. Edit, changed mages to shamans, and edited previous chapters of them as well for easier differentiation in comparison to magicians. PR afterward, Hulk smash. But a bit of booty on the side as well. Only way to travel nowadays. Translator. Calvi's proofreader. Sci 101. Chapter 14. You are listening at novelfull.audio. So the information and interrogation of the survivors were all done by Young Haen's hands. I began to observe the stem of her plants on her lower body absorbing away the magic and vitality of the survivors. The stem that appeared out of her lower body soon wrapped the humans up. But the attack wasn't strong even though it looked like it. If the survivors could move, they could probably easily resist, but since they were tightly tied up, they could do nothing but squirm. When I thought that something was being absorbed from her stem, one by one, each died with pale skin, deprived of life. And all of the guys trembled and breathed their last. Young Haen with a refreshing expression opened her mouth at me. Kayak. It's done. As expected. For all Rons, in Young Haen's position, it was fastest to accumulate experience by absorbing the magic and energy of others. Seeing her joyful voice, I could tell that her mind was clearly distorted. Seeing the happy Young Heian, I couldn't help but laugh. What should I choose? Which ones appeared? Ah. The first one is magician, while the second option is shaman. It's only these 2. I asked just in case, but it seems that a path of a higher evolution hadn't opened yet. Although there's not many upper races other than Allron, and it was alright to be an Allron until the end, but it felt somewhat unfortunate. Young Heian was staring at me with a very curious expression of which one to choose. Well, magician and sages are both pretty similar, however, I recommend the magician. Ah. There wasn't much of a reason why I recommended the magician. It was just because it was more rare. Currently, in this tribe there were no shamans. However, as it continues to grow, a lot of shamans should appear. But, among monsters, magicians are not common. It's because they know as well that the efficiency isn't that great for them. That's precisely the reason why when goblins first evolve, there was no option to choose a magician. Green skins are normally more suitable to shamans than magicians. Of course, a familiar monster like the succubus who has the same magic is not a bad choice at all. Allron's Young Heian was likewise. Originally a human, she'd be more close with being a magician, and it'll be much better than shamanism. Seeing me recommend the magician path, she nodded her head in consent. Yes. Then as a magician. As such, without any hesitation, she finished her evolution into a magician. There was no difference between a flash of light and a cheap wooden cane that appeared out of it, but the scent of magical power that can be felt with her certified that Young Heian had completed her evolution into a magician. How was it? It's interesting. A few spells have appeared. Although it's very little, but as for the magic, I can somewhat understand them. After the evolution, you can realize the basic foundations of the magic yourself, but after that, always remember that discretion of how far you can achieve depends on your personal training. Yes. Yes. Then other than the spells that appeared, am I able to use other spells as well? Since I had never evolved into a magician before, I wasn't sure, but I did hear a few conversations on it. For now, if you understand the spell mechanisms, then simple applications of them would be possible. First, being accustomed to them is priority. Even if you were to accumulate enough experience to evolve once more, if you lack the right or experience, then the path of an intermediate magician won't open. Yes. Thus, Young Hei-An slowly started to demonstrate the magic that she could use in front of me. As expected, like her identity as a plant monster, she could easily use plant magic. As for the rest, there wasn't much use except for the one that bound your feet with tree branches that pops up from the ground called entangle, which looked quite useful. Surprisingly, the area of effect was exceptionally wide. As expected of a plant type, your affinity is quite suitable. Yes. But the fact that the other spells are poor is a problem. She recognized her own limitations precisely. I could sense a burning passion alight from her look. With this, she should steadily grow as a magician. Then, for the second time, Young Hei-An and I returned to the tent again. It was because I felt the need to organize the information that the humans confessed from Young Heian's racial traits, charm, which she had used to extract intelligence. But, the problem was that there wasn't much useful information. They didn't really know much about the Queen of the North. Extremely strong or beautiful were what was said by those guys about that Queen's group. Late to conclude, it seemed that this group and the Queen of the North had no close encounter. This group is located in the outskirts of the northern forest and not in the center. As if they were a force that hasn't been absorbed yet, the probability of that was high. It was possible that this group was reluctant to serve under the Queen of the North, or they were planning on raising their own faction. Just like the information I heard from my subordinates. I was able to meet with MEV, who I had sent out to patrol the center of the northern forest, who had come back just now along with her archer squad. Captain. Did you discover it? Amencham. If you go a bit more north, there is a huge population of humans gathered. I could roughly guess who they were from those words. It seemed to be true of the information that they had settled in the center behind the mountain. Was there perhaps a flag or something that you could see? No. There was nothing like that, but there was a wall of ice surrounding it, I think. Since you told us not to get caught, we couldn't go closer to see. Estimation of the height. Hob. Goblin. It's a bit taller than a hobgoblin. An unconfident voice. Knowing what will happen if she gets this wrong, she was in an uncomfortable state. Seeing her silver hair bend down as she lowered her head, I patted her head since her action was cued as I started to ponder again. Roughly hearing this report, I could tell what kind of situation it was. They definitely had walls, even though it's only been 70 days since they were summoned. To be able to kill all the goblins, gather the survivors together and build a wall. It's possible. Of course, the opposite could also be possible. We had already conquered most of the south quickly with our tribe. Nevertheless, it wasn't easy for humans to fight against monsters of unknown form without knowing anything. Let's go together tomorrow once more. I decided that I needed to see with my own eyes first as I opened my mouth to MEV, who happily nodded in a joyous expression. So, the next morning, I took MEV and a few goblin archers to the base where they were secretly supposed to be. Though Young Hei-An wanted to go together as if she was worried of being alone, I couldn't bring a slow Young Hei-An with us. The large dot-framed Goff was the same as well. After a long time, bit by bit, the shape of the village began to form in sight. We have to climb this mountain. This is the farthest we've come before. Are you going up? Captain, let's go a bit farther. Okay. You observed well. The height of the walls are similar to what I've heard. Although the ice and stones were somewhat clumsy, they were able to construct the castle walls. Though it was only a tad taller than a hobgoblin, but just having that obstacle of a wall itself was quite a threat. First, goblins could not climb up those walls. The magicians seemed to have poured the water on rocks and ice that consisted of the foundation of the walls. The height itself was high enough so that goblins couldn't enter as well. If the area in which they had to defend wasn't so wide, then it was probable that the height of those walls could be even higher. I started to investigate the expressions of the people there. Since there wasn't much time until the tutorial would end, I could see people that looked like guards chattering on. Slowly, as I stared inside the village, I saw the figure of a woman surrounded by several men walking towards the center of the settlement. The distance was too far so I couldn't exactly see, so I focused magic onto my eyes. The blurred face started to clear up. Seeing that she had short hair, I couldn't be certain, but it seemed like it was the rumored Queen of the North. Above all, the definite evidence was the spear she was holding. It was then. The Queen of the North slowly turned her head and stared precisely towards my side. Fuck Eddie it felt as if her eyes and mine had met. Fuck. We return now. Ha. Ha. Why? We need to retreat now. There's no time to explain. The last two goblins that follow us, erase the footsteps and follow me. That monstrous bitch, that was all I could think about. She was truly a monster. To slay an orc with one swing of a sword, or the fact that she killed 10 goblins in her first battle, I had totally thought they were all nonsense. It was true. Although I wasn't exactly sure, the spear she was holding as well as how she looked at me, she evolved once more. The sensitivity that she had towards magic. Although I wasn't certain, the possibility of her awakening a unique skill was extremely high. Damn. I thought I had grown quite strong. Frankly, since it was flowing too well, so I had miscalculated. However, after seeing the Queen of the North just then, I couldn't help but realize that I was nothing more than a stupid fool. The difference between me against the real strong was levels apart. I could finally understand the reason as to just how fast, whether it's the Sword Saint or the Queen of the North, those types of people could raise factions that quick and establish cities. To be able to awaken that kind of ability in just 70 days, and to adjust that quickly. Only the word genius could describe the Queen of the North. The Saint Knight Sword Saint should also be at a similar level. At this rate, if anything, the moment I met that Sword Saint, my throat will be cut just like that. Captain. So you want to fight now? I suddenly felt like lightning struck my head. If I hadn't heard what Mevi said, I probably wouldn't have realized it myself. My whole body was drenched in sweat. My arm that was continually trembling, the reddened flame burning in my eyes, and that beast-like noises I was making even though I wasn't excited. Fight. Me. With that Queen of the North. Before I knew it, the edges of my mouth rose. My expression was definitely twisted. But, I couldn't stop the edges of my lips from going up. If it was the past, I would probably run away. That's the most rational and reasonable judgment. There is no fool on the continent that would oppose such an inhuman existence. But I laughed. Ruling out tactics, strategy, and the like, it was essentially a one-on-one fight to the death. The past me would never understand, but I could clearly see myself anticipating this moment. Gathering my thoughts, I quietly opened my mouth to Mev. Right. I want to fight. TL afterward OMG when she stared back and MC froze like that. Remember the anime of that Hunter x Hunter scene when Kite met the eyes of Neferpitou? Phew, what a scene. Gave me chills all over again. How much of a monster can a human be if a monster MC calls a human monstrous? Damn. Comment. I really appreciate the love and support for this series. I'm having a blast reading the comments here and discussing with you all on LCD in NU. Not only that, I am grateful for the corrections and mistakes that you point out. I've posted more than usual today in appreciation. Thanks for all the support, comments, and the added motivation PR afterward. Puny human, Hulk take your eyes out use as a necklace, translator. Calvi's Proofreader. Sci 101. Chapter 15. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Yes. Blood Dagger. Definitely among the green skin, they are the only clan that retreats in battle. What? You say that they are despicable without honor. How laughable. Even if Blood Dagger clan runs away, they are ones that desire victory and honor more than any other green skins. Great leader Goff, it was hard to restrain my combative spirit. Even after returning back, all I could think of was only, I want to fight. Although it was the Queen of the North that had just started her tutorial, I wanted to totally collide blades against her. I want to measure just how far I've come. These kinds of thoughts continued to wander in my brain. It seems you want to fight. The Blood Dagger clan's captain wants battle and blood. Our captain wills to fight. These were the first words that Goff, including his subordinates and other clan members, spoke when they saw my condition. I thought that I had somewhat settled my combative spirit, but it seems it wasn't possible to hide it. The fact that my whole body was stiff with my eyes red when I entered, I can understand why. The tribe clamored for some time, asking who I wanted to fight so badly. These guys had lived together with me for 70 days. To not see me show as much of a combative spirit as other orcs and goblins, I could understand why they were so excited seeing me like this. In preparation for the next battle, we held a meeting that you couldn't really call one, as the other guys continued to pursue the matter even more. Especially, Goff, who was smiling at me with his molars popped out, was very memorable. It wasn't his usual appearance, I could see. Definitely from the enemy's tribe. You saw someone. Who's the opponent? Karuk. Although others had assumed that I just wanted blood and battle, Goff had properly seen through me, so I helplessly had no choice but to answer his question. It's a human female. The moment I said this, I could hear a burst of laughter. Even the other clan leaders couldn't stop their laughters. Kirik. This is quite a masterpiece. To provoke the combative spirit of the Blood Dagger clan's chief for the first time would happen to be female. It's a human. Female. Not even a green skin woman, but it had to be a human woman. Girik. Girik. Come to think of it, hadn't he taken a human around? Maybe he confused it for lust. It was quite an explosive speech, as everyone started to make fun of me quietly. If you come to think of it, it's quite proper. In their eyes, all they could see was a male adult wanting to fight with a young girl. But Goff was truly staring at me with interest. This will be quite fun. I wonder what you want. The quieting mass from Goff's words. The words of Goff, who had the largest and strongest group, were very influential. I started to contemplate carefully on what I really wanted. In my previous life, I didn't have a combative spirit drawn out against someone necessarily. In terms of saying this in the words of Green Skins, he's one that doesn't know honor. That's exactly what the past Kim Taesung was. Starting from the first battle in the tutorial to other battles and wars, if there was no hope of victory, he was one who would immediately turn his back from. It wasn't like he didn't have a will to fight, it was just that he gave up in advance after realizing the result. As such, I was quite ashamed. In such a great battle in front of me, to speak such words, I couldn't comprehend myself. Up to the extent where I thought I was crazy. But the problem was that I couldn't have endured keeping it in if I hadn't spoken those words. I could feel my breathing become rougher just from the thought of the Queen of the North. I want to fight. I wanted to struggle and win. In the end, I opened my mouth. I want to fight with that girl, just the two of us. With no interruption. Goff laughed aloud at those words. A sacred battle. It seems that these guys call a 1 versus 1 as a sacred battle, traditionally. I recited those words before I knew it. Sacred battle. That's right. A sacred battle. Blood Dagger clan's leader. The Blood Dagger has officially requested a sacred battle. The opponent is the human girl. We will aid in achieving this battle. No matter if the opponent is a human girl, if it's a sacred battle, we will help. We have the will to support this sacred battle. With one word from Goff, the atmosphere was built as all the other clan leaders nodded in agreement. As such, a sacred battle was decided. Although I didn't know in what way or form it would be fought, I will be fighting that girl in the next battle. While I am fighting the Queen of the North, the green skins will not hinder, but they will also do their utmost to not let other humans interfere with the fight as well. But the problem was how we were going to fight. If it was as simple as knights from the Middle Ages throwing their gauntlets and fighting naturally in the momentum of the flowing battle, it would be very easy, but the humans think of us as monsters that are trying to eat them. Well, there is a truth to that. Even if I were about to pierce my sword, there was no mistake that her followers would run in aid and make sure that I won't do such a deed. What's more, there was the problem of infiltrating through their castle walls. If it's Goff, he can somewhat smash his way through, but even if he were to destroy the wall of ice, the entrance was too small. Not many goblins could enter at a time. If we were to attack towards the wall of ice without any preparation, while in the midst of advancing into the village, we could be caused of destructive harm and be victim to only be helplessly killed. I started to think if there was any option. If we could set up Young Haen's entangle that she learnt yesterday, we could use the vines to climb over those walls. Well, you couldn't really call them castle walls as the ice wall wasn't that high. It was only the fact that it was too slippery which was difficult. If it came down to it, the evolved orcs like me and Goff could just jump over. I have a proposition. I'm not sure if this plan can properly succeed or not, but it is an enemy we had to face. I started to speak of the thoughts that recently materialized in my head. Not bad. No. Very good. Although they were discussing it, in their perspective, it was quite a surprising strategy. No, rather they were very excited about it. It was probably due to the fact that this method could allow them to engage in a fierce frontal battle much easier. Thus the next day, the personal training and experimentation, including Young Haoen's skill assimilation, had commenced. Entangle. The first area of effect magic was small, and only one hobgoblin couldn't endure and fell from the vine. Entangle. The second time, the goblins were able to somewhat endure it, but the range of the spell was too short. CA. Captain, the range is too. Add a bit more magic and we'll experiment once more. Although she was successful in wrapping a non-human target with her vines, but it wasn't as satisfying as I thought, so we had no choice but to capture other humans living in the outskirts and start giving them over to Young Haeon. Thanks to that, she was able to grow quite quickly. Although her efficiency and experience was a bit low for her to evolve into an intermediate magician, it was a great achievement just to have the range of her entangle increased. Of course it wasn't as wide as to cover the entire walls, but in my opinion, it would somewhat allow our side to narrowly cross over from the cut line. Probably, if it was a normal magician, this would have been impossible. Since she was a monster with great affinity to magic, as well as her usage of plant magic, it was able to match what we needed. I was able to employ a mock battle to have these goblins and hobgoblins who hated to move without a purpose to adopt this training. As expected, these guys who didn't want to partake at first were excitedly and passionately training once they started. Although there were some fights that occurred from the conflicts going a bit too far, since they recognized each other as one tribe, the fierce conflicts didn't spread too much, which I was thankful for. Of course the training wasn't entirely injury-free, but at that time, the elder goblin that everyone had forgotten had evolved into a shaman and started to treat the injured goblins. Ugh. Blood Dagger Leader, this mock battle is really effective, I think. It doesn't seem like child's play at all. To undergo this process, even one more green skin can fight with honor. It's similar to lecturing the young green skins on how to fight. Karuk. At first, the old shaman had a somewhat reluctant expression in reply, but as time slowly passed, after watching the efficiency, he stopped talking. Your words are right. You're right. Giric. Giric. And it was at this time. In the vicinity of the camp, human tracks were slowly being discovered. Of course, they couldn't approach closer due to being discovered, but seeing these traces, it was certain that they were checking on us. Karuk. It seems these guys now know of our existence. It's possible since the girl's eyes and mine had met. We tried our best to erase our tracks, but it seems they found out. Thinking about the Queen of the North, my body naturally became red-hot. Once more, my look became reddish as I could feel strength entering my whole body. Goff, seeing this, mumbled to himself. It seems you yearn for it. Right. I yearn for it. The duration of the tutorial is precisely 10 days remaining. The tutorial's objective is to survive for 10 days. As such, the time in which the Queen of the North side and ours hadn't collided were 20 days. TL afterward 10 days left and the greatest battle MC has to ever face will come before him. Who will prevail? P.S. Didn't I mention how cool Goff was? He has to be among my favorite characters for this series. Comment. Hey all, sorry for the wait. Was a bit sick and couldn't do too much but stay in bed for about 2 days. Here's your chapter PR afterward. Hulk will crush puny human queen. Translator. Calvi's proofreader. Psi 101. Chapter 16. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After finishing our preparations, we began to advance. The green skins who looked as if they were lit with fire, had strange markings drawn on their faces as if they knew that this was their last battle in this place. That was likewise for our clan as well. I saw a goblin with good dexterity, one by one, started to draw on the foreheads, arms and even the bodies with a large dagger. I ask you, too. G. Rick. It's an honor. Soon afterwards, the dexterous goblin started to draw on my face with a large dagger. Although it wasn't a first that something was drawn on my face in relevance to our camouflage before, but this meaning of shamanism that was painted was a first. It was quite thrilling just from the thought of it. It's the last battle. The last battle. A large group continued to advance north in order to plunder that last fortress. Seeing footsteps of humans along the way, it seems they realized that we were heading towards where they lived. But, we will never retreat. Even when the enemy knows where we are. Even when the enemy knows we were going to attack. What the hell does that even matter? Plus, if I were to say such a proposition to the group in the midst of advancing, I'd probably get beaten up by the other greenskins. Continuing to march, I could definitely see a few humans on top of the ice wall. They haven't fled. Rather, it was as if they were welcoming us. It was certain that they wouldn't run, I thought. Considering the rumors that circled the personality of the Queen of the North, that kind of decision wouldn't make sense. All the green skins that faced against that wall of ice had certainly realized it. They wanted as well. To fight. Cool. In front of the walls, a great war cry echoed through the place. Boom. 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 The beating drums were swallowed by the winter winds. Victory or death. Someone had screamed aloud in the back. The rest of them similarly started chanting the slogan. Soon, a large war cry surrounded the green skins. Victory. Or death. Charge. In a short moment, the white field was a sea of green wave. Woaya. Giric. 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 I wonder why they were running together. The green skins' way of fighting really had too many blind spots. If they don't see the enemy, they search, and if they see the enemy, they charge. The problem was that they would charge without thinking of the aftermath. No matter how much they love wars and battles, it was as if they were jumping into the flames of a large fire. If I was a human, I would definitely not be able to understand this kind of method. But not being a part of this group, I could start to understand these guys' mind of wanting to jump into this battlefield. There was no format on both sides whether it was front or back, but the excitement of this green wave was increasing. My heart was pounding faster as I could hear the screams from somewhere. My eyes started to shine aflame, and I realized soon that I was screaming something that I didn't know of. Carry-eek. Warriors, raise your shields. The situation where we were near the walls. From this distance, we were in the range of human archers who had completed their first evolution. As if they anticipated for this, the hobgoblin warriors raised their shields. Compared to the green skins, it seems that the archer ratio was quite large. It seems that the humans of the northern forest, not wanting to fight against blood-crazy monsters, were likewise here. She-eek, puk. 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 Hak. Girik. Hak. Girik. Girik. Instantaneously, about 20 goblins collapsed. Although there were a few that was calmly swiping the arrows away with their sword or dagger, but they were of the minority. The archers were already preparing for their second barrage. We needed to get closer before the second arrow barrage rained down. Kariak. We're raising our speed. Raising our speed. Suddenly, I could feel magic starting to flow out from the ground in front of us. These fuckers, it was a low trick to freeze the ground so that we won't reach the castle walls as fast. Though it was simple, in terms of the ratio of archers the enemy possessed, it was very effective. But, this kind of situation was within my range of thought. And then, entangle. The spell rang out from Young Haen's lips. From the ground spread out vines as they continued to climb above the walls. It wasn't a large range, but the wall's width weren't that long as well. It seems that the enemy magicians had prearranged this magic beforehand to prevent us from advancing. A few were victims of the magic as their bodies froze on the ground, but the pushing green army didn't stop. Keep running. Don't wretchedly fall here and die honorably. Girik. 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 Hobgoblins that were urging the dying goblins started to appear in between. Of course, it was questionable whether it was right to encourage them to move forward, but the goblins endured the pain and continued advancing. We're crawling up. Girik. Climb up. It's war. It's war. The members that were in the leading group had soon reached the front of the wall. Although there were awkward spearmen that tried to thrust down their spears of wooden sticks with a blade fixed on top, but their spears were rather caught, causing them to be flung off the wall. Hack. Fuck. These bastard-like monsters. These fucking bastards. Stop them from coming up. Don't allow them to come up. It was granted that I had also reached in front of the wall. Although hobgoblins and goblins couldn't jump over that uncertain height of the wall, but large tall orcs were possible. I immediately rushed at the humans and swung my sword. The clumsy spearmen had their bodies and heads crushed as they were swept aside, allowing the other goblins to start climbing up the vines one or two at a time. Though there were humans that were waiting below, it seems they haven't grasped what they were supposed to do. But, the arrows continued to rain down. The goblins continued to climb up the wall that's not a wall really, and eventually, I decided to make the archers my first objective. I used a human corpse as a shield as I could hear the unpleasant sounds. Puk, 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 the arrows flew onto the dead human body. The body started wriggling as if it was stretching out from being stiff. The goblins that saw me block the arrows started to use human corpses to defend likewise. In the while that the archers were quickly reloading, I slowly started to look around my surroundings. Where is the Queen of the North? There was no mistake that she was displaying a noticeable performance. It was probable that she was in charge of preventing goblins from climbing over the wall. A sudden thrusting sword. An ignorant-looking goblin caused the man's sword to fly away, who soon had his head detached. Ahk. Kariak. The ongoing screams and the blood that splashed onto my face caused my eyes to redden again. My breath was becoming rougher. The loyal 5 goblin siblings who had climbed up at some point were protecting me by my side. As expected, they were showing a brilliant performance. Here and there, "This is the Blood Dagger clan." They screamed, but the humans couldn't possibly understand those words. MEV was also steadily helping as the first among the 5 as she continued to shoot arrows into the enemy's faces. Good. There wasn't as many casualties as I thought when we climbed up. Though the difference in army sizes between the two weren't high, but at least we had killed off the good. 4 nothings. Starting now, the real battle that we wanted. Since their ratio of archers were high, the melee side definitely had the advantage. Turning towards the only large voice that I could hear, it was Goff. He wasn't already an orc, but was something that you could call a half-ogre. Although I didn't know since he was always with me, in comparison to the humans, it was a large existence that was overwhelming them. Even his thick flesh were deflecting arrows of the human archers that had completed their first evolution. In the end, even the blades that couldn't pierce the skin were like deers trapped within an unreleased lion jumping around as there was no one that could bravely pierce their swords against him. How amusing. How fun. But Goff was extremely enjoying it. To fight against enemies with the will to battle. It was probably a reward for the lukewarm battles that he had so far in the tutorial. Like how the humans in the south were afraid, it seems it was the same for these soldiers as well. But, their eyes were definitely different. Like Young Heian. The will to live, the pride and confidence that they survived till now, and the many battles they experienced in these mere 90 days. Stop that large one. Thrust your spears. Those warrior-like eyes that the humans in front of me had. Though they were afraid, they didn't retreat. They would have fled like me in the past, but they hadn't. Admirable, the fact that these normal modern citizens could survive in this barren setting was itself admirable, and the fact that they could emit such looks in their conditions despite being surrounded by blood-crazed monsters were admirable as well. To sense the will of these humans to not give up and do whatever to survive. It was a first in my life that I had started to enjoy war. Kill this crazy monster bastard. Kuruyuk. I quickly approached the guy trying to thrust his pair and slashed his right arm off. They had grown quite a lot from their severe battles in the past, but their levels and experience compared to me were different. Other than me and Goff, the other clan leaders were also displaying great performances. Soon, the war situation slowly swung towards our favor. Our allies were clearly swallowing these guys up. It was certain just from the screams that the humans let out from here and there. It was then. A spear that suddenly flew towards me. It wasn't a sloppily formed crude spear that had a stick with a blade tied on top. It was a real spear, something that wasn't forcefully crafted up. I was too slow to block. I used my strength and jumped back. It could be quite a laughable scene if you see a large orc avoid the spear of a girl, but this was something serious. If I got struck by that, I would have died. The spear soon flew towards my retreating body. I should be able to avoid about this much. Lowering my head down, I avoided the second attack. I didn't hurriedly swing my sword or rushed out. First, I was precisely measuring the opponent in front of me. As if there was a kobold in the north, it was a body that was wrapped up in a kobold's fur leather. The hair was the short hair like I saw from before. Unlike Young Heian, who was sexy at every angle, her slim body was imposing. Although a bit small, the look on her eyes was extremely tough. The opponent that was glaring at me was definitely the Queen of the North. TL afterward. Dang, magicians are overpowered. Too bad MC only has 2, kinda, magicians hee. Finally, the battle against Queen of the North. Was shocked when he said he would have died from that spear strike. Phew, must be a tough opponent. PS Goff is one OP orc. Deflect swords and arrows. Kill several at once. Damn. He might probably be right behind MC. Comment. Here's your second chapter. The next chapter's title is still the same. And thank you for the get well wishes. I'm sure it'll hasten my recovery. Happy face, PR afterward at long last, Hulk crush puny human. Translator. Calvi's proofreader. Psi 101. Chapter 17. You are listening at novelfull.audio. My experience wasn't that useful, and even so, I had really only killed the goblins at best, but I do have 10 years of experience. I secretly began to inspect my body condition. I could faintly sense some magic wandering around in my body. Opposing me was the strongest, who was called to be one of the continent's top 10 summoned. But, she's currently a novice whose abilities are now starting to develop. Anyhow, my opponent is definitely a genius. However, I won't falter just like that. I want to test myself. I want to fight. That kind of desire and urge continued to soar within me. That feeling when her eyes and mine met for the first time. That emotion which I couldn't control no matter what. The will to fight. My breathing automatically rough, and the cold sweat I felt on each pore that was screaming were imminent. It's the monster I saw from before. It's been a while. Queen of the North, Han So, Hai mumbled as she began to glare at me. It seems that she remembers me. Despite my face having a sloppy dagger picture drawn on it, seeing that she can recognize me, her eyesight is quite keen. It's an honor for you to remember me, was what I wanted to say, but I couldn't. If possible, I wanted to hide the fact that I could speak in human language. It seems that Goff, the other clan's members, and all of the other green skins that were a bit strong were wholly brought over here, made Queen of the North's mouth water. Probably, among the monsters they fought, it's highly possible of the fact that they decided me to be the most dangerous. To be quite honest, I was very grateful. But, I was also extremely hot. I wanted to rush in and fight immediately. Kuruyuk. The most loyal of the 5 beside me started to nod after looking over. Seeing the current situation, they estimated that the burning combative spirit of mine was probably against that girl standing in front. That stare of the Queen of the North. My fighting spirit was burning immensely to the limit, so it was truly difficult to endure. In the end, I was forced to run against Han So, Hai. Kwa. I did not mean to scream. But, I couldn't help myself. Hearing my scream, the man protecting the queen in front ran towards me. All the green skins around me collided against the man in place of myself. It was likewise for the 5 goblin siblings. It seems they were doing their utmost to stop anyone from influencing the battle. Naturally, there was a large line made in the center between her and I. The green skins were continuing to push away the enemies. It's the sacred battle. It's a sacred battle. No one can interfere. Giric. Blood Dagger clan leader wants a sacred battle. Here and there, goblins started to clamor and advertise. Goff, who was killing humans like he was killing off some rats, laughed down on me while the rest focused their eyes on the impending battle. It seems that the humans have already been pushed towards the walls. As such, the green skins, one by one, turned their attention towards me. They looked like they wanted to be eyewitnesses of the sacred battle. Suddenly, a large green wall of goblins surrounded the 2 of us, making it like a great arena. The Queen of the North, surprised, looked at me as she opened her mouth. I think I know what you want. Even if you didn't say anything, there's no way you wouldn't know from this situation alone. She knew what I wanted just from my contact alone, a 1.1 battle. Kaya. Rushing in fast with a swing from my broadsword, the Queen of the North quickly created distance. Her weapon was a spear. Usually a spear was much more advantageous against a sword. Although it wasn't universally recognized, a spear did have a bit of an edge due to its range. As for me, though I have a large frame, it's also that much easier to be targeted. And it definitely wasn't like I had the habit of fighting face Face like Goff. Though my body was burning, I also kept in mind that I had to fight cleverly. Deflecting the spear away, I advanced. The most basic strategy is definitely a straightforward one. I needed to close the distance to win, and she had to keep the distance in order for her to achieve victory. The oncoming spear thrusts that pierced the air towards me was, in short, flashes. The moment I blinked, I could see her aiming for my joints. I couldn't believe it at all that the girl standing in front of me with that kind of skills after 90 days. Her spear thrusts weren't ordinary at all. She knew what she was doing. Although she didn't completely understand the extent of my abilities as well, but her attacks were extremely difficult and critical in my eyes. Though I had continued to close the distance at first, I realized that the distance between us only grew. Fuck. The level difference. To be this high. Despite my 10 years of experience, I was slowly being broken apart from a 90-day greenhorn. All the swordsmanship, study, and everything else I learned from my past life was slowly one by one being destroyed. Kaya. My sword that was slowly slipping into a perilous situation. The Han So Hai was very simply deflecting my attacks as she didn't allow me to separate from her, attacking me smoothly with her spear. It was quite a pitiable situation. Truly, I nearly laughed in these circumstances. In a stance where she could scrape at my flesh, I ignored her swing and aimed to deal a heavy blow. As if realizing my intent, she retreated 3 steps back. If I tried to manage a defensive posture, she would fiercely come after me. A distance only 6 steps apart. I couldn't close this distance of 6 steps at all. Fuck. Fuck. If I think about it, in the past, I was numb from others outpacing me. Hey. Kim Tae-sung. Did you hear? The summoned rookie this time. It's already rumored that the person is eyeing for the Saint Knights. Apparently, he easily killed an ogre on his hunt. Ah. I see. It's not something that concerns me though. Kim Tae-sung. Kim Tae-sung. You know the man who lives in the dumpster disposal plant. In the end, that person entered the Red Cross clan. Ah. Who would have thought that old man would become one? Well. I must say I'm envious. Kim Tae-sung, you alright? So why did you foolishly attack? For someone who's only been here for 2 years, you're quite reckless. Right. Ugh. It hurts. Fuck. I should be like that. Definitely not caring about being outpaced by others. But now, I feel like I'm going to go crazy. The useless times I had in the past was so pathetic, I couldn't control myself. Putting the sword close to my body as close as possible, I need to concentrate on blocking her attacks while advancing. Slightly avoiding the critical attacks against my head and body, I need to hold my sword firm and be ready to defend. To hold the sword reversely. There was no meaning to this necessarily. However, by doing this, it would be easier to advance and block. Since it was easier to block, I went with this option. If she steps back a step, I need to advance by 2 steps. If she distances herself by 2, I need to close in towards her by 3 steps. As such, I will decrease the distance 1 step at a time. The burning sensation in my body was still there. This combative spirit. My spirit was constantly fanning on me and finding a way to shorten the distance. Humph. The Queen of the North was in the midst of swinging her spear emotionlessly. I continually advanced forward. The 6 steps soon became 5, and the 5 soon turned into 4 steps. Sometime later, I was fighting at a sword's distance. Karayiak. Quickly raising my sword, I slashed furiously. Even though she's trying to distance herself, she was definitely in my range. Forced to block. She'll definitely block. Kwajik. As expected, she blocked it. Holding her spear vertically up, she was defending against my sword with both arms. I had the advantage in strength. She was frowning, as if her hands were starting to hurt. I need to catch her. Qua. This difficulty. Obtained opportunity. If I don't use this timing well, then it will be that much more strenuous. One more step. I stepped in front, one step exactly. Instantly, I swung my sword from atop down as she started to block with her spear vertically up. The spear was about to break from my blows, so she quickly crouched and escaped my attacks. Then, one more step. I could clearly see blood flowing out from her hand that was gripping the spear. The recent 2 blocks that she made had caused her to have an injury dealt to her hand. Though tiring, there was no mistake how enjoyable it was. One step, when I felt that I was getting closer to the Queen of the North, my heart continued to pound. It was probably due to the hope that I could get closer. But, this time, the Queen of the North didn't stand still. In order to impair my movement, she started to aim for my legs. The distance grew to 3 steps, and once I caught up, it happened again. After 10 seconds of, no, hundreds of clashes, there was only one thought that was stuck on my mind. Fun. It was extremely enjoyable. Before I knew it, the edges of my lips started to rise. My body was automatically reacting as well. At this time, the Queen of the North started to look over. There was no mistake. She was clearly laughing as she smiled. Koreak, with my uplifted mood, I charged towards her like a boar. The 4 steps of distance that she maintained, it was sufficient enough for me to land a critical blow. Likewise, it was also enough for me to receive one. If I continued to tire her stamina out like this, then I would clearly be victorious. First, I needed to create a situation where she couldn't avoid. I'm an orc. If nothing else, I was clearly ahead in terms of stamina. At the time when I felt that the Queen of the North's body was slowly becoming sluggish, that I swung my sword with a slash to her body. She will definitely block by vertically holding her spear up. Kwang. Though it was a brief moment, her body trembled. The real part starts now. Since she blocked it vertically, her opposite side was totally vulnerable. A distance I couldn't reach with my sword. However, I could with my legs. Even if not completely, it doesn't matter. Just by grazing it, I can hinder her mobility. As such, I extended my left leg to destroy her stance. I expected to hear some broken bone sounds, but the Queen of the North aimed for my right leg, causing my other leg to swing in the air. Damn! As if she had anticipated this, she stepped onto the rod of her spear. In a moment's breath, she was jumping in the air. Shortly, I could see a spear piercing towards me with an appearance like a queen. Instantly, I could feel a strong pain burning on my chest. It pierced through. All that immense strength I was controlling soon crumbled down. With that blurred conscience, I couldn't believe that I had lost while staring at the spear thrust into my chest. I lost. TL afterward NOOPS. Wait, so is the Queen of the North a child or a young woman? I need to see a picture author. Comment. Okay, recovery finished and just completed all my midterms. Woot. Anyways, a fun chapter to translate and better catch up to all those missed days. PR afterward reverse grip looks like this. Or this one. https://www.youtube.com/watch.v equals AMR5 Loisy 4 JW LOL. Translator. Calvi's proofreader. Psi 101. Chapter 18. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Although my consciousness was blurry, I tried my best to hold on to myself. Despite my efforts, however, my body was continuing to fall down. In that moment, I saw the faces around me as if they couldn't believe what they're witnessing as they watched the battle. I wasn't surprised. I could say that among here, I was one of the strongest members. From the outside, right after Goff. Although other goblins may not recognize this, but if I were to battle against Goff, I would definitely win. So it wasn't irrational for them to have such shocked expressions on their opponents was of weakling, a prey of the lowest kinds. It was a human girl. The other clan chiefs finally accepted the fact that I wasn't kidding from before. Mev who was about to cry, the loyal 5 goblin siblings and their grave expressions. Above all, they were stunned. Goff had the same expression as well. It seems he was restraining himself from immediately coming over from his expression. As such, I collapsed on the ground perfectly. Though I could feel my body crash against the ground, but the pain in my chest caused me to not feel that pain at all. I couldn't put any more strength in my body. It was a feeling I was accustomed to. It was a feeling very similar to what I experienced as a human. Though I couldn't hear much from the surroundings very well, but I still tried to listen. The sacred battle is won by the human girl. Blood. Dagger. Lost. I could hear the green skins crying slowly embedding into my mind. The victor is the Queen of the North. Dumbfounded, tears started to flow fiercely down my face. It definitely was because of the pain or the fact that I didn't want to die. I was angry at losing against the Queen of the North who looked like a small child. I slightly turned my head and stared at the Queen of the North. The green skins started to make way for the Queen of the North who had already turned her back from me as if she wasn't interested. That was how they paid respect to the victor of the sacred battle. The war was won. As we already infiltrated through the castle walls, the high ratio of enemy archers couldn't handle us at all. In fact, the battle flowed towards our favor and we won, but I lost. My sight slowly blurred even more. But above all, I was very distressed not being able to even see the shadow of the Queen of the North. It felt as if that girl was slowly drifting away. I had shortened that mere 6 steps of distance to 3. However, now that distance was slowly becoming farther. I wanted to go closer, but I couldn't. After a while, once I lost complete sight of her, I started to hear a voice. Quest complete. Quest, Tutorials Northern Forest Conquest. Conquer the Northern Forest. 1/1, Impressive. You have succeeded with your clumsy strategy on repelling the group of the Northern Forest. A special class has opened. The war is won, but you who have lost the battle. A new special class has opened especially for you. You have successfully completed the quest. The quest reward is rank up. Please select from the following. Making the Queen of the North leave this place was one of the conditions in order for the quest to be completed. However, I wasn't too excited to hear this at the moment. Listening to that voice, I lost my consciousness. Kariik. Kariak. I quickly opened my eyes. Instantly, I looked at the scenery around me. To be honest, you couldn't call it a scenery. It was a villager's home that the humans had used. I slightly turned my head towards the side and saw a sleeping Mev and Young Ha-Yun sleeping by the bed with their eyes closed. Kariak. The growling of an orc kept ringing in my ear. Who? Slowly turning my head and looking up was the face of Goff. Though it may be just me, but I think he grew a bit larger than before. If I think about it, I remember that I had completed the quest before I fell unconscious. I could tell that he had gotten a bit stronger even if he weren't able to evolve into the next species. As expected, the probability was high that he was either an intermediate orc warrior or some different special class. As if he recognized someone staring at me, he opened his eyes and spoke. So you've awoken. Yeah. Seeing that I could speak a bit, it seems the goblin shaman had healed my wound to some extent. Frowning while staring at my wound, he spoke again. That human woman had insulted your honor. However, that is of course the right of the winner. You have to live. You need to live to pay back what you owe. You couldn't die honorably in the sacred battle. Kariak. Seeing it, it seems that it was dishonorable to not die in a sacred battle. Funny as it is, I was quite grateful that the Queen of the North had allowed me to live. I can fight once more. Thanks to surviving that battle, I can fight with that woman once more. Seeing me not saying anything, as if Goff understood, he patted my back. Kariak. How painful it must be. Even while comforting he continued to growl. I could somewhat understand what Goff was feeling. He definitely had the same emotions I felt against the Queen of the North. Fighting spirit. Goff was definitely feeling the same thing I felt. It seems you want to fight. It is so. Even after seeing that woman, to not feel such a way, you can't call yourself a green skin. But truly strong. The Queen of the North. No matter. Even if it is. You. No. Blood dagger. She's not a human woman. That woman is definitely strong, but she's not a woman of the humans. I started to stare at Goff, who had interrupted me. Those burning eyes, the lips that continued to move, the tough muscles that were about to burst, and the fighting spirit that was about to explode. All of those emotions were clearly directed towards me. I want to fight you. Blood dagger. It's an honor. Right now, you need to focus on recovering your honor. It seems I said something useless. Kariak. Don't worry about it. Although the words were a bit flat, he rose his large body up. Despite being so busy, to wait like this until I woke up meant that he was worried about me. Though I never had a close fight against him, I couldn't help but laugh. To have Goff worry about me. I slowly began to inspect my body. Whether the Queen of the North truly gave mercy or I had luckily survived by avoiding those critical strikes, but I definitely survived. Whether it was because of the orc's vitality, my body was normal. I slowly rose my upper body up. Some rags were sloppily wrapped around my wound. These rags were quite loose. As if I had moved my body wrongly, I could feel pain rise up from the wound. In the midst of that pain, the face of the Queen of the North emerged once again in my mind. I lost. That last attack was definitely not me being careless. If I think about it now, trying to shorten the distance until that last attack was as if it was all foreshadowed. Seeing that she continued to block my attacks with her spear straight up, it was certain that she was raising my confidence on purpose. It was a simulated move that she had planned up already. Truly strong. At least I reached her. Though I wasn't able to land a critical strike, my sword did reach her spear. As I was recalling the battle once more, it was then. The sleeping Young Ha-Yun beside me started to open her eyes. Seeing me awake, she stared at me with her eyes wide open. Then, she slowly opened her lips. You are awake. Yeah. How many days has it been? 1. You were asleep for 1 day. I see. I thought you were going to die. I thought so too. Silence filled the air for a moment. Looking at her face, it seems that Young Hye-yeon had something to say, but was holding it in. In the end, she started to speak after the silence was lengthening to some extent. Don't die. Don't get hurt. If you're not here, I don't have anyone to rely on. After saying so, I saw Young Ha-Yun's face strangely reddening. As much as trusting me in evolving into a monster, there will also be no one to rely on if I wasn't there. After privately sharing a lot of conversations, it seems that she held some sentiment to me. I couldn't help but slightly laugh. All right. I'll bear that in mind. Yes. I'm sorry to say these kinds of words. It's not that. But what happened after I collapsed? Gob. The goblins and the hobgoblins made way. Though I didn't clearly hear it, but I think they said. The sacred battle's victor had the right. So far as allowing the rest of the humans to go with her. Goff clan. as well as the other clans, did not even touch the humans that left. Although I roughly guessed it would happen like that, but hearing them directly, I couldn't help but feel restless. It seems that after that battle, the war had soon concluded. And everyone were able to accept the outcome since the clan leaders had announced in advance about the sacred battle as well. The Queen of the North Side must have thought that the war was already lost. In the end, it seems that they had chosen to take their troops and leave the place. Although there couldn't have been an incident where some didn't realize the order and continue to attack, but I don't think they were as stupid to do that. Though I'm not sure where they left, either to the south, west, or east. I'm sure we'll meet on the continent someday. While I was listening to Young Ha Yun, Mi woke up from the noise. Cap. Tain. Cap. Tain. Captain. Ugh. The moment she arose, she jumped onto my body, causing my upper wound to sting. But, I was more worried about the Blood Dagger clan. Though I didn't know about their conditions, but Goff did say that I had lost my honor. Although it wasn't like they were ones that really took care of their honor, but a sacred battle was a different story. Worried if my subordinates were disappointed and had left the clan, I asked Mi, who quickly gave back a response. Perchance, where are the clan members now? Are there any that left? No. There are no goblins that left. Rather, they were screaming that they would regain your honor back. It was a result that was quite funny. Though it wasn't like I didn't have any affection towards these goblins who I couldn't differentiate from their faces, to think of me to this extent, I couldn't help but start to love them. Imagining the goblins and hobgoblins all rolling around the ground and leaping in rage, a smile started to rise from my face. And I won't leave as well. You don't have to worry. Mev, who had wanted to mate with me on our first meeting, was saying this shyly, causing me to understand as if this was a natural response for an evolved fairy. Anyhow, the fact that either Mev or Young Ha Yun hadn't died, and that none of the clan members had left, was a huge benefit. Come to think of it, I did hear a voice that claimed that I had completed the quest before I collapsed. TL afterward Goff. You are too cute at times. PS next chapter is called Special Class. Whoa, I wonder what he'll evolve to. Guesses? Comment. Thank you for the first ever donations. It felt weird as it was a first, but I was extremely grateful and glad that you were all so supportive. I needed to buy some textbooks for university, and it really helped. As for the releases, I'll have to readjust my release schedule as I've been extremely busy with the start of intersession for my summer semester. I will be doing my utmost to upload in my spare time, so I hope that you can all bear with me. Not sure how many, but I will be thinking along the lines of 3.5 with the addition of sponsored chapters per week until my schedule lightens up. I'll be drinking more of that coffee now. Hope you all had a fantastic weekend. PR afterward green skins have honor, reminds me of WoW movie last fight scene between Night Orc. Epic. Thankfully MC did not get castrated. Translator. Calvi's proofreader. Psi 101. Chapter 19. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Special class. Slowly raising the quest window, I could see that a completed quest was indeed waiting for me. Quest complete. Quest, Tutorials Northern Forest Conquest. Conquer the Northern Forest. 1/1, Impressive. You have succeeded with your clumsy strategy on repelling the group of the Northern Forest. A special class has opened. The war is won, but you have lost the battle. A new special class has opened especially for you. You have successfully completed the quest. The quest reward is rank up. Please select from the following. 1. Intermediate Orc Warrior, 2. Orc Swordsman, 3. Orc Assassin, Special 1. Orc Commander, Special 2. Orc Gladiator. There were 2 special options that opened this time. As expected, there were none that allowed me to evolve into a higher species. However, seeing the option of an Orc Intermediate Warrior, I was fine with it. In this kind of case, I need to choose carefully. I slowly began to ponder. First, the commander option was immediately excluded. The orc assassin as well. There was no particular reason necessarily, but it was just that I was more familiar with the sword. If you think about it, I might grow stronger through the path of a swordsman. But there were some limitations. From the start, I had no talent in swordsmanship. Even though it was a path I had traversed once, it was still somewhat hesitating. I slowly began to read about the special. Special 2. Orc Gladiator. Fighting for an orc gladiator is life. Long ago, when the humans had enslaved the green skins, the orc gladiators that fought in the Colosseum was one of the most popular events. In the Colosseum, the orc gladiators fought for survival rather than honor. Increases the proficiency on all weapons you use. Not bad. The description alone wasn't bad at all. Rather, it was quite decent. The one that I liked the most was that the gladiators prioritized survival over honor. It was also a plus that the class could wield a variety of weapons. It might be a bit ambiguous, but in my previous life, fighting with only a sword was quite peculiar. More precisely, once I choose the gladiator class, a high-level class would be even more appealing, though I do have to confirm it once I evolve into the intermediate class. Although the commander class wasn't something that I was a kin of, I thought it wouldn't hurt to read the class description as well. So I decided to look at it. Special 1. Orc Commander. Commanding the green skins is the greatest honor for an orc. The green skin clan that gets commanded by an orc commander will have its battle prowess increased. As a commander, rather than creating a buff for the army, more precisely, the green skins will be able to listen to orders easily. Increases the proficiency of the sword. It was a class so fine that I wondered why I haven't read the description to this day. I even had a clan, so being a commander wouldn't be bad at all. But there was no denying that it was a class that would be less effective than the gladiator as you evolve. Although missing out on the increased sword proficiency was regrettable, but the gladiator class had much more features. I didn't hesitate twice and decided. With the word gladiator floating around in my mind, soon I could feel my body shaking. But, it wasn't a change as great as when I had evolved from a goblin to a hobgoblin, and not as painful from a hobgoblin to an orc. The instantaneous shift in my body soon stopped. And I could realize that my body had changed despite lying down on the floor. I slowly gripped my fist tightly. There's no mistake. I became stronger. What emerged from my head was the basic proficiencies of the usage of the spear, sword, axe, and the two-handed sword. Although the rest will take effort and training, but I was quite pleased with the selection. The fact that I could understand all the basic weapons to a certain degree will aid me aiming for critical points in a battle against opponents of all varieties. While I was gripping my fist tightly like that, Young Hei-Eon stared at me and opened her mouth. So you've evolved. It's good. Though it's basic armor, on one shoulder, a piece of armor was added. It seems there was no weapon gifted. Being wounded, it was extremely uncomfortable to have the shoulder armor on, so I decided to take it off for the time being. As if she knew I was uncomfortable, Young Hei-Eon was already taking it off my shoulder. Come to think of it, everyone had completed the quest as well. Come to think of it, both of you have completed the quest. Is there anything different? MEV answered first to my question. With quite a triumphant face, she began to speak. Yes. Captain. I evolved into a fairy sprite archer. Oh. I've evolved into a plant magician. No matter how you think of it, it seems that both had attained special classes. Though it wasn't like special classes were necessarily greater or more effective than the other ordinary evolutions, to have both of them evolve into special classes. The results of this war was quite fruitful. How's the sprite archer? MEV started to stare at the sky after listening to my words. She was probably checking on what kind of class the sprite archer was. From what was written, it seems that among the fairy race, the elite archers were called sprite archers, I think. Though I'm not sure, but apparently magic proficiency is increased as well. There are a few spells, and I could feel my mana increase, so I guess it's a good thing. Amuncham. You did well. Just from the explanation, I could tell that it was quite similar to the human's magic archer. I had thought there would be a difference among the two classes since she said sprite archer instead of magic archer. But, as for me likewise, it was a class that you needed to advance to the intermediate in order to precisely confirm the effectivity of the class, I think. How's the plant magician? I'm not sure if there's a huge difference from before. Nothing like intermediate magician appeared, but just a plant magician option. Was there? I didn't have a choice. Ah. It was probably due to the fact that she lacked experience. Despite completing the quest, the fact that she couldn't evolve into the intermediate class could only be from her lack of right to evolve at her current state. But, a plant magician wasn't bad at all. Since her element is of the plants, her magical power will be increased, and with her heightened proficiency, it'll be easier for her to use spells than an ordinary magician. I think it's fine. Yes. Yes. I haven't heard of it directly, but I'm sure that the other clan members have become quite stronger. Especially the loyal 5 goblin siblings I was curious of, but since they were faces I would see once I healed, I decided to take it slowly. My body was still a bit sleepy. I slowly closed my eyes, and the rest of the time flowed by. The duration of the tutorial is precisely 30 minutes remaining. The tutorial objective is to survive for 30 minutes. The tutorial was coming to an end. Even though I nearly died, the orc's recovery was quite good. Or maybe it was that old elder goblin shaman skills that were quite good. Cool. Your body is quite strong. You're nearly fully recovered, Karuk. The pain in my chest is still throbbing. If it were the other green skins, they would have definitely died. You have good luck. I remembered that the elder that was treating me had created a clan from the aftermath of the battle. Dark Moon Clan. Though I had thought that he wouldn't be of much aid, after evolving into a shaman, the true value of his class was revealed. Being an intermediate shaman after completing the quest, the green skins that believed in shamanism revered him quite a bit. If it wasn't for this elder goblin shaman, Dark Moon, it would have taken longer to recover. Elder, thank you. Do you happen to know what happens once the tutorial ends? This morning, I could hear God's voice. Not just me, but all the other green skins had all heard of it. I wouldn't know either. Though I'm not exactly sure, but I think that the setting of where we are will change. Dark Moon, you're a shaman, right? Do you not know what will happen? Karuk. TCH. Just because you're a shaman doesn't mean you know everything. Maybe I'll learn of it later. Today's treatment ends here. Then, I will take my leave. Like that, the Dark Moon Elder left outside. Usually, once the tutorial ends, after the settlement all are immediately transported to the continent. The settlement is the review stage where you are graded from the deeds you accomplished in the tutorial, and are able to take useful things bought from the item store to the continent. Anyone can open the item store once you move to the continent, which is quite important. For humans, you can buy money with points, but I started to be curious of how things will turn out for green skins who don't have something like currency. In my previous life, after the tutorial, I wasn't able to purchase anything. From what I've heard, the item store that appears when the tutorial ends has a lot more useful items than the one that you could open in the continent. Of course, item.wise, the items that you can obtain from dungeons are much more effective. However, as one that will land on the continent right away, the difference between being empty-handed and equipping basic equipment is quite large. I know better than anyone as someone who landed on the continent empty-handed. I experienced it together with Choi Solji. As for humans, you must receive education once you're on the continent after the tutorial ends. Come to think of it, although it's education by word, in reality, it was a course intended to select and choose abled people. I'm not sure how things will transpire among the monsters, but from how clans don't touch or interfere with each other, I think there won't be such a thing as education here. No, there's a great chance for it not to happen. Rather, it'll be more of a larger clan absorbing the smaller clans, or making alliances. Of course, the seniors that are already on the continent are definitely strong. As green skins that pride themselves on honor more than anything else, there shouldn't be any needless events. While I was thinking of such useless thoughts, I walked out. Girik. 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 Kurawuk. In a long while, I saw the Blood Dagger clan members. Seeing the ratio of hobgoblins were higher than goblins, I could feel that their battle prowess has increased. It's the captain. It's the Blood Dagger. It's the Blood Dagger who has lost his honor. The captain has revived. The clan members welcomed me with screams once I appeared. In front of me was Young Heian, Mi-Vi, and the loyal 5 goblin siblings. The first and second had chosen orcs, while the rest of the 3 female goblins continued to stay as goblins. It seems that the equipment on them had changed accordingly to something of a swordsman, or maybe a hammer warrior. Whether it was due to the many evolutions, seeing those cute fellas pounding their chests towards me was extremely cute. Seeing the cheers of the goblins for my appearance, I decided to reply to them by pounding my chest as well. Victory. For victory only. For Blood Dagger. For the despicable Blood Dagger clan. The duration of the tutorial has ended. For settlement, after moving you to the store, you will be soon transported to the continent. Listening to their cheers, I took my second step into the continent. TL afterward education system even in the continent. Ugh. PS next chapter is called Warrior Exam. I thought there was going to be an item shop. Comment. Okay, so I got it wrong. The 5 goblin siblings are 2 males and 3 females. Okay. The first 2 is apparently male. And the rest of the 3 are females. Damn, I got so confused as well. Makes sense. 3 cute goblins. Well, I'm not sure how they can be cute but better than orcs. Thanks to my readers and PR for being patient. Been living on that coffee lately, phew. PR afterward back into the breach. Translator. Calvi's proofreader. Psi 101. Chapter 20. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Welcome to all that survived the tutorial. This is the item shop. Please purchase the necessary items before entering the continent. Orc Gladiator, the points of the Blood Dagger will be confirmed. Impressive. 10,000 points have been settled to Blood Dagger, who has accomplished remarkable achievements. Not bad. With this much, I should be able to purchase a few essential items, though I can't get one extremely remarkable. I began to look around my surroundings. It's called Item Store by name, but in truth, it was only a small store for my eyes. When I was a human, a beautiful young girl was managing the store, but in this case, it wasn't so. A very despicable-looking goblin was flipping a coin around as he stared at me. Beov, hurry and choose quickly. I'm a very busy person, friend. I decided to answer with just a nod. Even if I were to speak, that goblin wouldn't answer. It's probably a rule as a manager, I think. As such, I began to peer in the small store. There were so many items in the store that I wouldn't have been even surprised if it were to collapse. I began to look at the merchandise one by one in my mind. Weapon store, cheap greatsword, 10 points, flame bat, 3,000 points, large greatsword too large to be called a sword, 9,000 points, an honorable orc's blood axe, 15,000 points, I'm not sure myself, but the greatsword too large to be called a sword was very enticing. As much as 9,000 points. As I furtively brought the description up, the goblin manager began to bring the item towards me. A fearsome appearance. Truly this item was too large to be called a sword. Opening the info page, the description soon appeared. Large greatsword too large to be called a sword. A weapon used by the legendary orc mercenary, Kruka. Other than the fact that durability doesn't decrease, there are no other features. It seems there weren't any features. I swung the greatsword once around. I couldn't help but wonder if my weapon's reach was a bit longer, then maybe I could have attained victory against the Queen of the North. I probably could have landed a strike as well. It may be because of evolving into a gladiator, but the feeling of the sword wasn't bad at all. I thought that even if I didn't use a sword, I could block the Queen of the North's spear. Automatically, I began nodding my head. If I was a human, I probably couldn't have wielded this. But, let's skip over it for now. Although it's very enticing, there were still a lot of items to check. Passing the item section, I began to look towards the scrolls. Unique ability, HP increase, 5,000 points, Pursuit, 7,000 points, Flame Spear, 12,000 points, from the past, the one that I had attained, HP increase, was 5,000 points. Although it wasn't as bad as it looked, I had no intention of buying it. By looking at the section roughly, I could tell there were no special unique abilities. Since I could blossom a unique skill once I enter the continent, I naturally skipped over it. To be honest, the biggest reason was that there were no skills to my liking. Not sure if it's just my standards that were very high, but there were none that looked useful. The armor section was likewise. It was okay, but if I had gathered more than 10,000 points, then I could have purchased a very useful one. How unfortunate. So I turned over to the class change section. Class change, Orc, 10,000 points, Lower Demon, 400,000 points, Ogre, 500,000 points. I didn't have points even relatively close to those numbers, so I skipped over. The other goods looked good at first, but there was nothing I could purchase. I thought of buying a potion just in case, but that was all. In the end, I decided to look at the limited items that you could only attain from the tutorial. The item list that you can purchase from the tutorial castle store, Blood-soaked dagger, 500 points, large greatsword too large to be called a sword, Baobab turtle spice set, 20,000 points. Class evolution, Black Orc, 50,000 points, unique ability, Maton's desperate defense, 900,000 points. There were quite a lot of items that stood out than I had expected. The most absurd one was the Baobab spice set. Though I'm not sure what that is, to sell it for a preposterous 20,000 points, I can't help but think that the people that would buy that set are nothing but fools. But the significant surprise was that the large greatsword too large to be called a sword could only be purchased here. Though there are no other benefits other than the durability not decreasing, but if you think about it, it was a huge advantage for your sword to not lose its sharpness. I called for it once more and swung it around, and determined that I could definitely wield this with my orc strength. The evolution into a gladiator increased my proficiency with the greatsword as well. I must take this with me. As for points, I'll continue to earn them later on. Judging that there was no reason not to use my points, I made the decision to use all of my points. You have purchased the great sword that is too large to be called a sword for 9,000 points. You have purchased the blood-soaked dagger for 500 points. You have purchased the tutorial store's potion for 500 points. Thank you for using it. Friend. When I was a human, the cheap steel sword that I carried around for 10 years. It was a rusted item without a blade, and if I faced someone with good armor, it was one that couldn't even penetrate. As someone who didn't even try, saying this was quite funny, but I had really desired of obtaining useful equipment. Now seeing the great sword that was completely mine, I couldn't help but satisfactorily laugh. It felt as if I had attained a rare item in a game, but the fact that I could use this weapon directly brought a joy greater than I had thought. That black moonlight-colored wide blade. Though it wasn't a sword larger than an orc, but it was one greater than the body of a hobgoblin. A leather belt was included with the item pouch on the right side, making me look as if I was actually a famed summoned. During my human period, that figure which I aspired to be. Before I realized, the edges of my lips rose. Since it was quite heavy, it will take some time to adjust to the weapon, but I had no problem with it. I can never say that I am talented. To be honest, it wasn't as terrible. There was the reason that my proficiency in all weapons had increased as a gladiator. If not a sword, then with a dagger, if not a dagger then an axe, if not an axe, then an iron mace, if not an iron mace, then a great sword. I can fight with a variety of weapons. Thus, that's the standard for the strong to achieve victory. That's the conclusion I came to after suffering defeat against the Queen of the North. Tightly gripping the steel sword, I began to hear a voice. The use of the store will end in 10 minutes. You will be transported to the continent after 10 minutes. As such, I took my first step into the continent. I could feel my body shift somewhere as the setting around me began to change. What soon came to my sight was a large jungle. The place where we were transported to was a place where someone had arranged quite artificially. When I was a human, we had received education in the middle of a center, so I had thought monsters would have something similar, but it seems that I was wrong. Blood Dagger Clan has reunited. Giric. 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 Seeing everyone's equipment change a bit, it definitely is reasonable to assume that everyone had bought something from the store. To see these guys with their not-so-bright minds purchase items was as if an unknown power had taken the time to teach them on the system of point exchange. It's a new sword. I bought a new bow as well. Giric Giric. Young Hei Eon was holding a staff I haven't seen before, and MEV had a new bow strung on her back as well. Though they didn't have as much points as me, it seems that they have received a decent amount of points. Amongst the clan, the one that stood out the most was definitely me. An extremely huge greatsword was on my back, so it obvious how it would catch the attention of everyone. The playful goblins were snooping around me, busily appraising the sword. Our captain is definitely different. It's a huge large sword. It's the best weapon. The best weapon. There wasn't clamoring only happening on our side. At Goff's direction, the goblins were jumping and screaming as well. Goff clan Chief Goff's weapon is way more impressive. Giric. Giric. I secretly turned my head towards the clamoring and saw 2 axes on Goff's back. It was a weapon extremely suitable to him. Seeing no other equipment, it seems that he had invested all of his points on just those axes. Though I was curious of its features, I turned away for now. Currently, the priority was finding out what situation we're currently in. Once calming down the clan members, leaving MEV in charge, I approached Goff and the other clan chiefs. Good that you've come. Blood Dagger. Do you happen to know what this place is? If I had known, I wouldn't have walked over here. I don't know as well. Goff. Unlike before, this place is a wholly different place. To end up in a jungle from a place covered in snow. We did have food, but settling a camp in this place was quite ambiguous. As such, while we were discussing on our planned actions for the near future, it was suddenly then. Warrior. It's the warrior exam. To all the surviving green skins. I began to hear a thunderous voice from somewhere. Fuck. When I was a human, I had definitely received education. It seems that it was the same for monsters as well. If this exam is education, then this place is indeed an education center. The problem was that this exam was going to be done in the way of the green skins, by fighting without holding back. Prepare for battle. Battle preparation. Blood Dagger Clan. Everyone prepare for battle. It's battle. The despicable Blood Dagger Clan's chief has declared war. Victory. Only victory. For Blood Dagger. Giric. All the other clan chiefs hurriedly began preparing their clan members as well. The goblins who had always pounded those human-skinned drums began drumming. Boom. 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 Karayiak. Once we were almost finished establishing a warlike atmosphere, it was then I had heard the voice once again. It was a voice quite far away. It was definitely looking at us. Survive. You honorable warriors. Survive. It's an honorable exam. Fucking bastard. Honorable my ass. It wasn't like I had wanted a warm welcome like I did as a human, but as a joke, I felt that this was taken way too far. The reason was that there were countless beasts surging towards us. In perspective as a human, these were definitely monsters. Long-fanged tigers, iron-jaw leopards, steel-armed bears, all classified as monsters along with the green skins. It seems they were living in this jungle. Though I'm not sure how these creatures were sent here, but it looks like that defeating these monsters was the exam. Raising my sword, I screamed. MEV. Yes. MEV, who started pulling back the bowstring simultaneously from my cry. Behind her were countless goblins pulling back their bowstrings. Fire. She-yeek. The ones that were struck by arrows stumbled for a bit, but their speed hadn't slowed down. Of course there were some that had fallen, but it was only a handful. Charge. Green skins. Holding my great sword, I rushed at these guys. TL afterward. Wow, that's so sudden. A test right after they moved. PS I wish I could see what a lesser demon's features would have. Sounds awesome. And damn, Matan's desperate defense must be some sort of Second Life feature for it to be that expensive. Notice. In response to my reader's curiosity, I was extremely busy with some assignments due to my courses, so I wasn't able to be as active lately. 5-week courses are hell. Thank you for asking. As apologies, and also as thanks to all those that continue to support and donate despite that week-long hiatus, I'll be releasing 4 more regular chapters plus a sponsor today. Have it all completed. Just need the last few to be proofread. Also, I'll translate and upload some bonus chapters over the weekend if I have the time. Thank you for your support and patience. 1/5, Translator. Calvi's Proofreader. Psi 101.